Well, hello, FiRians. Welcome to a new decade, actually, those of us who are pedants. It's great to be invited to help spark another of the classic CTO challenges we've had over the years. My name is David Brin. That was a brief glimpse of the ArchiTechs TV show that we made a few pilots for, and History Channel decided instead to go to Infinite Makeover UFO edition. Such is civilization. But I'm paid to write science fiction stories as well as blather about tech issues, consulting and things like that. So it took Mark several years to figure out a good use for me, and apparently from the popularity of these CTO challenges, this is it. We have an extra space, and I will explain why that's there. But first, the CTO challenge, it began with the notion that we gather some of the bright guys who are here. We're still, next year, I'm going to insist, Mark, bright guys and gals, who attend FiRe and get them into a challenge based upon that ArchiTechs pilot. The other one, this one did the Humvee. The other one was, I think, even better, in which we came up with several dozen ways in and out of burning buildings. And it's a subset of the notion of challenge stimulation exercises. So what we do is we gather together these CTOs and CTO equivalents, expose them to a wonderful lecture like the terrific one by Professor Nate Lewis, Caltech. We went to the same house at Caltech, and both of us knew Steve Koonin, who is probably the most famous guy from our set of classes. And we asked these wonderful speakers to set a keynote, and then the next day I act like Commissioner Von Essen or General Abrams in the ArchiTechs show, and I say, gentlemen, here's your challenge. Well, today's wonderful panel, we have, starting from the far end, we have Professor Jerry Woodall, who's from Purdue University. He's Distinguished Professor, National Medal of Technology Laureate. We have our own Larry Smarr, who's become a regular on these CTO challenges, who's Distinguished Professor at UCSD and head of Cal IT2, which a lot of you returning FiRe folk remember as one of the features of past FiRes. Many times we got to see some of the wonderful high-tech visualization technologies that are developed at Cal IT2. Returning is Eric Openshaw, one of the most valuable members of our group in the past. I think they got in the wrong order there, but I still recognized him. Vice Chairman and U.S. Technology Leader at Deloitte. Chris Halvorsen is also returning, and he is Senior VP and Chief Innovation Officer at Intuit. Both of them very valuable in past CTO challenges. And then Thomas Aidan Curran is CTO of Products and Innovation at Deutsche Telekom. And he brings sort of a rock sensation vibe with him onto the team, as should be. We need that. And of course, the inimitable Ty Carlson, who keeps looking younger every year. One of these days, I'm going to send you off to get me a Coke. Architect, SiArch group at Microsoft. Also a guy who can manage to make me seem tongue-tied. So if we could have our first slide. Oh, I'll just click it. Let's see now, I think, well, the one before that. Yeah, there we are. That is the introductory slide. It shows the design team for this year. I'm the ArchiTech challenger. I designed the overall schema for the challenge, but we'll I'll keep mostly hands-off during the design. And of course, our special guest, I mentioned him once, but deserves mentioning again, Professor Nathan Lewis, distinguished professor at Caltech, real preeminent in this field. He is going to serve as core judge when the challengers make their presentation on Friday morning. So then this is an example of Ty being not very tongue-tied. And I suppose at that point I'm probably sulking because someone else is far more articulate than I am. But you can see that everyone is very entranced. Now let's go through the previous. I think we're actually cutting off these slides. But this was our first challenge back in 2007, and that is designing the next cell phone. Tom Malloy, Mark Bregman, and Jeffrey Nick, CTOs from 3 different companies, were the chairs of these committees, and we discovered that it was great to get involved anybody who wanted to from out there. That's why we have an extra chair out here. It doesn't stand for Elijah, it stands for you guys. So when we have the breakout sessions, the first one is at 4 this afternoon. Any of you who want to attend, put in your 2 cents about the topic, which we officially don't know yet. By all means, get involved, draw on the easels, become a full member of the committee, and you will be acknowledged at the end. In any event, the committee back in 2007, if we could just squish these slides a little, the committee back in 2007 studied the basic idea of a hand-carryable communication device and came up with some very interesting ideas that are just sort of coming into play now. The most interesting one that I wanted to show you was the Lego fob, the notion of being able to take different physical capabilities and latch them into your base unit. It's interestingly because this is exactly what happened a couple of years later with apps on the iPhone and now in most of the advanced phones. Only I think that we haven't seen the last of this idea because there's a limit to the apps that you can do when you want to project something, when you want to have sensors that can detect pollutants in the environment or do laser range finding or do all sorts of the tools that a person on the job might want to snap into their PDA and phone. So I think this idea is going to see the light of day. What you cannot see still in the upper left corner is 2008 FiRe challenge. And that one was themed against the crisis that we had in San Diego County. I was out there doing my civil defense duty during those terrible fires. And it was better ways to coordinate the prevention, discovery, and rapid response to wildfires. And this, I think, was one of the most successful of our challenges because the local county fire departments were actually very excited by some of the suggestions made by these folks who have experience dealing with technology, but also coordinating how technology proceeds, how to target research, things that need to be done that might be bottlenecks, that might stand in the way of rapid and resilient action in the case of an emergency. And so there were follow-up meetings. And then what we have here is the next one, last year's, which dealt with problems of water shortages. How in an urban environment can we develop better ways to utilize the water resources we have, to preserve the water resources we have, methods that can help in the American urban environment, methods that can help beyond the American urban environment, and thirdly, methods that might potentially lead to profit. Because ideally, in our Enlightenment civilization, these are not incompatible. And so there were some There were some various, some of the locals in San Diego, the County Board of Supervisor were very fascinated by this. They were very interested in the possibility. Scott, there's no way to shrink these down, is there?
Change resolution.
Change the resolution. In any event, there were follow-up meetings from last year's conference on water usage at the San Diego Zoo and several other places. So there definitely have been people interested in the outcomes from these exercises, although let me reiterate, the main objective of these exercises has always been to have fun at FiRe, to network, to expand your own horizons as the CTO or an innovation officer in your own company, and some of the methods that some of your fellow members have used to liven up the research and to make connections that might solve some problem that you might have within your own company. That's why I've been asked by a number of companies to run these ArchiTech challenges for them in-house. This last year, Mark took this a bit farther and held many ArchiTech CTO challenges at FiRe West up in Seattle. And they were spot-led by two of my colleagues in the science fiction and technology field. Science fiction author Greg Bear, one of the greats of all times, and my fellow killer bee. He led the challenge, how do we make Washington State more tech entrepreneurial? And you can see some of the suggestions listed down below, and some of the members of including one familiar name of that panel. And Brenda Cooper, who is CIO of the city of Kirkland and also a science fiction author, helped facilitate a 1.5-day discussion of how can technology promote rational discussion. I asked Mark to include this one. This is something that I'm very, very much engaged in, including some patents having to do with this very notion, and that is how can rational discussion be popularized online, and this seemed to have been a very successful session. So, here we are. Today's schedule is, we started the challenge. I'm blathering too much. I'll try to speed up. 4 p.m. today is the breakout working group, and then you'll continue with evening conclaves. You guys know the drill, at least Eric and Ty and Chris do, and Larry. Evening conclaves, you'll have easels to work with, and of course, you'll have experts to poke at. We're going to cheat a little bit. The judge is going to be available to ask questions along the way. So he's going to be more like a teacher, more like a professor. Oh. Tomorrow we have informal brainstorm sessions. You'll presumably have lunch together, and you'll be joined at lunch by this year's graphic facilitator. He was not able to join you today, so at today's breakout, those easels, they're all yours. But tomorrow, David Winkleman will join us, and he'll start doing the razzle-dazzle bit with the easel magic, and he'll work with some of you with your laptops to try to get started toward your presentation. You'll have another 4 o'clock breakout working group, evening conclaves at which you'll prepare your report, and followed by 10 a.m. tomorrow, the ever-popular CTO's report. We're on record twice in the history of FiRe as being two of the only times that Mark Anderson has said, take all the time you want. I'm going to brag about that incessantly. Okay, so it does show up there. And so after solving the world's problems having to do with air, fire, and water, can we save the Earth? Haha, very clever. The 2010 CTO Design Challenge is scaling alternative energy. Can it be done? And so I'm going to hand over for 3 slides the baton to Professor Larry Smarr, who found 3 better slides than the ones I had. So he asked Scott to replace mine, and I couldn't agree more. I'm sure he has some very relevant information to kick off this theme.
So this is just to recapitulate what Nate laid out for us so well last night. This is from the U.S. Global Change Research Report, the last 800,000 years of the level of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere from deep ice cores. And what you can see is that the Earth up until the last century was in what you might call a bistable oscillator of the ice ages, going from ice as high as the Sears Tower over Chicago to 100 degrees in the summer, back and forth, but never really exceeding, as Nate said last night, 300. You can see where the dot is now in 2008. In fact, those are values recorded on the top of Mauna Loa. That's my shirt I've got on today. I made a pilgrimage in December up to the top of Mauna Loa to see where these heroic scientists have spent 50 years getting monthly values, accurate values of the CO2. But the Earth continues, human civilization continues to blithely increase that CO2 to regions we haven't known actually going back several million years. If we could, Shell has done a study of if we did heroic global efforts, we might be able to keep it to only 550 parts per million instead of the 300 we're going to get very soon. And the MIT study shows that as business as usual, by 2100 we'll be up at 900. So this is taking the Earth climate system into arenas that we haven't seen certainly in human history. The next slide. So what are we going to do about it? Well, there's an important new paper. As you remember, Professor Ramanathan was the banquet speaker in 2009. He's come out with a new paper, literally just a little over a week and a half ago was published. I've given it to Mark to distribute to you. It's a very important policy paper. He says, what can we do to keep the global warming from going above 2 degrees? What you see in that red chart is the increase in CO2 from 1850, and that peak is in 2015. So we have to turn on a dime as a world and then drive that CO2 emission rate back down to 50% of a current by 2050 and then on to 80%. And that's not all. We also have to deal with the aerosols and black carbon and so on. But the key issue is to do that, alternative energy must be scaled up vastly faster than we're doing now, and we have to deal with the carbon sequestration for coal. Next slide, the last. And so the International Energy Agency has actually done a very detailed study on this. This is to just show you that where the world is going with continued economic growth and taking, again, hundreds of millions of people out of poverty in China and India is that top line, getting us from our current 30 gigatons of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere every year up to about 62. Where we've got to get to keep the world from going above 2 degrees centigrade, which itself will melt the polar ice cap, it will cause enormous change, but still hopefully not catastrophic, is we've got to be down at 14 gigatons instead of 62 of emission by 2050. How we get there is basically, without reading the fine print, the top circle is carbon sequestration, that is capturing the CO2 coming out of all the coal plants and gas plants and putting it underground. The second one is what we'll focus on in this challenge, which is nuclear and renewables. How can we accelerate in time this to happen? And the other is what we heard about 2 panels ago, negawatts. How do we actually use energy efficiency to reduce the demand that would otherwise be there? The problem, as Nate so eloquently said last night, is unlike the other greenhouse gases, which are short-lived in the atmosphere, and we can hopefully get a handle on them like we did with the Montreal protocols for the ozone hole over Antarctica, CO2 lasts for 1,000 years. So every day that we delay and put more CO2 in the atmosphere, our grandchildren are going to live in a world that's been transformed by that CO2 because it's still in the air. And so that's why it's so critical.
Thanks, Larry. I think we'll open things up for discussion among some of the panelists, but I did want to mention that a classmate of Nate's and mine, same student house, Stephen Koonin, is now Undersecretary of Energy. He looks like he got out of BP just in time. He was chief scientist for BP. And if you want to look up one of his lectures, it's a great supplement for Ramanathan and for Nate's talk at FiRe last night. And his last name is Koonin, Stephen Koonin. And it's a fairly lengthy talk, 20, 30 minutes talk about, with some very, very, very good slides, about he believes that solar concentrator, solar thermal power has some real possibilities. But the main thing is that all of this gets bollocksed up into our nation's current culture war. I keep running into people who should be part of the discussion, the negotiations over how to solve this problem, who are mired in this absurd notion that we should somehow be fighting over whether there's a problem. Even though if you reductio ad absurdum, you take the so-called skeptic position to its limit, and that is, I, as a complete amateur, politically motivated amateur, know more about this topic than the people who know the most about it. People who, for example, have now based their vacations on weather predictions that are reliable for 3 days and pretty good guesses, pretty good estimates for 2 weeks, nevertheless believe that the same people who have made this miracle in weather reporting haven't a clue what they're talking about with regarding climate. I wrote an essay about how to tell a global warming skeptic from a denier, and it's gotten some substantial viral buzz because it gives exactly the ammunition to corner such people and either make them continue the dots and ask questions about the science while admitting that even if the science were 100% wrong, every single slide were 100% wrong, and there was no human-generated CO2 problem, the palliatives that are being proposed to fix global warming happen to be exactly the same things we should be doing in order to get energy independence and revive the economy and be masters of the technology, industrial technology of the next 20 years. So that is the reductio ad absurdum of this whole business, and I wanted to get that little blather point in because we keep running into this. We keep running into this, and it's standing in the way of a major Chinese economist said the other day, "We hope that you Americans will keep arguing about whether there's a problem for the next 15 years, because at the end of that time, we'll own all the technologies for fixing it." Is Patricia Friedman here? Well, in any event, oh no, it's a different conference, sorry. I'm really, edit that from the tape. He's the son of Milton Friedman, and he is building, trying to get together rich people to build stilt communities on island nations that are going to be drowned by global warming and then claim sovereignty on these places. So the right wing isn't all in denial about this. So let's see if we can open this up for some preliminary discussion by some of you guys. The main thing about the CTO challenge is a lot of smart people are looking at this. What you guys need to do is point out solutions that may be getting a little too little attention. Lots and lots of people are going to be saying we need more research in solar energy. That's not what we expect from you. What we expect from you is to say, this is where we want to ring a bell. We want to come up with positive sum synergies that maybe people haven't noticed, that might draw entrepreneurial investments, alliances, technologies, that our own savvy companies here or their allies might be able to pursue both out of self-interest and corporate good citizenship, or ways to focus the attention of the public, nation, and world. So here's the team again. But you folks are the stars of the show. You have been in past episodes of FiRe. So we have some resources, including Steve Koonen's talk and Professor Lewis's site. So we want you to go forth and thrash those ideas and report back to us Monday morning. Do any of you guys have anything you'd like to jump in on?
I don't think I'll be here Monday morning.
Oh.
Friday.
How about Friday?
Oh, I'm sorry. It wouldn't be a complete without my foot in my mouth at least twice during the presentation. Any of you guys have anything you'd like to add as sparks to get these guys to choose your breakout? You've had 2 weeks.
Well, I'll go. I certainly think we need to focus a lot on the energy saving side of this equation, because I feel a little bit like this is a closets in your house, and if we build a lot more energy, we'll figure out a way to consume it fast. So maybe we need to focus on the demand side and significantly drive down demand while the rest of these great technologies can catch up.
I think a lot of it will be driven by education as well. I think we have to go out and broadly educate people on what really is going on, because there's a lot of deniers out there that want the status quo. The energy industry is not necessarily motivated to address this problem. And so it's through education and getting people on board to help contribute to it, because there has to be an incentive plan to motivate people to make a change. And that will be hard because we're used to having so much.
Do you think we're seeing obfuscation like in the old tobacco wars? Trying to prevent something from happening for a long time.
I think to some extent we're really not spending enough time understanding the complete demand model for a lot of energy, and I think, you know, in some sense, let's start another way. In 1981, I was co-author of the U.S. government's econometric demand model for energy that's still being used today, that in some sense based itself on many types of data points that would indicate exactly the problem we have today, except we weren't looking at carbon output, we were looking at demand and especially after the shortages of gasoline at the time were a very pertinent problem for the governments. So today we don't have that pertinent demand problem, but we have instead a pertinent environmental problem that we're predicting based on environmental data, but not on demand data. And I think that's one of the issues that is where software can make a big difference, is looking at a lot more how we can optimize the overall demand. And that has an input parameter that has to do with savings, but I think it also has to do with a lot more distribution of how and when we create energy.
I think we're pre-obfuscation stage. Once awareness spreads through educational efforts and more talks like Nate's, and we see how radical action we have to take, then I think obfuscation will take place. So education, social awareness, and political engagement is no doubt important.
But I think Larry made a very good point that the world, there is a lot of hope in the world now. The world is entering the middle class at a towering rate, largely due to Walmart. That's another story. But the fact is, huge fractions of the world are entering the middle class. They want the life that we have. We have got to find a way for them to get it a lot cheaper than we got it. Cheaper on the earth.
Cheaper in the sense of environmental aspects, yes.
Much, much lower impact, more on the Dutch level than the American level. 10 seconds, anybody? Yeah.
I believe in a military solution. We need to declare war on CO2 emissions.
Oh. I just saw one.
We love to fight wars in this country. Just look at your history books. Especially if we go offshore, we just love to do it. Let's do one onshore and take care of it here first.
The air is everywhere. Well, thanks a lot, guys, and do take part. 4 o'clock, we'll see you. Thanks for coming.